My name is Helen Bird. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for Utilligent, which I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a moment. Right now, I want to introduce my panel here, and I'll start with, I'm going to let them go to a deeper introduction of themselves when they start to talk. But first, to my far left, to your right, is Jason Hanley. Jason is the Director of Smart Grid Emerging Technology for Duke. And I think that's an amazing title in the first place, so you got to get invited to a lot of cool gigs. So we want to hear more about that.
Yes.
Next to Jason is Martha Mitchell. Martha is the VP of Customer Successes at CPS Energy, and I also thought that was an incredibly cool title.
Thank you.
I need to do something about my title maybe, because these people are very creative. And then there's Frankie. Now, Frankie created his title as well. So Frankie is the Chief Energy Delivery Officer for SMUD. Now, a couple of interesting things about this is that on this panel we have one of the largest, in fact, probably the largest investor-owned utility in the United States in Duke. We have two of the top three largest municipally owned utilities in the United States here. So this is going to be a really interesting panel with a lot of different perspectives. I happen to know that these two guys in the cities are very innovative as well. So I think you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives. I'll just make a little note for Frankie. I walked in a few minutes ago thinking, oh, I get to moderate this panel. It's always easy to be moderator. And I'm looking around, and there's SMUD tchotchkes everywhere. And if you sit on the front row, you can even get a cow. Hold the cow up. Go ahead, hold the cow up. So I know those are going to be hot items as the afternoon goes along. So thanks, Frankie. I think you're going to win.
We'll have to carry him home at least.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to start the panel today by letting each one of our panelists talk a little bit about their companies and what's a little bit unique about their companies. And Jason, would you mind starting us off?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Jason, again with Duke. Duke is a relatively large regulated utility in the southeast United States. We are in 6 states throughout the southeast. We have about 7.4 million meters, affecting about 25 million customers, or 25 million people. We manage a relatively large grid, 95,000 square miles of service territory, 32,500 miles of transmission, and around 264,000 miles of distribution. That means that we could put distribution poles all the way to the moon and around it and start coming back. So that's a lot of distribution that we maintain. But what we're most proud of recently is our foray into renewable energy, and the fact that we are now the second fastest solar growth state in the United States. We do both regulated and non-regulated solar in our territories, and we have roughly 2,800 megawatts of solar and wind that we over about 16 states in the United States that we manage.
Wow.
I'm Martha Mitchell from CPS Energy in San Antonio. For those of you who haven't been to San Antonio, it's about an hour south. You might want to take a quick trip down while you're here. We're the 7th largest city in the United States, 1.5 million people. We have a lot of history you've probably heard of the Alamo, and we are a World Heritage Site. We have a large military presence, at one point known as the mother-in-law of the military, because they all came to train and married local girls. We do have a large hospitality industry. You've heard of the Riverwalk. We have resorts, we have theme parks, and we also have sports. We have the Spurs, and if you're watching the Final Four this weekend, that's in San Antonio, so I hope they show a little bit about our town. CPS keeps the lights on. We have 1,500 square miles of service territory, 800,000 electric customers, 350,000 gas customers, and we have 3,100 employees who proudly serve our community.
All right, Frankie?
Hi, I'm Frankie McDermott. I did make up the title. I'm Chief Energy Delivery Officer because the original title was Chief Generation and Grid Assets Officer, and that rolls right off the tongue. So I'm responsible for generation, transmission, distribution, metering for SMUD, also our commercial development group. SMUD is a municipal utility in Sacramento that covers Sacramento County, about 900 square miles. I think our uniqueness, there are other entities probably like this, but we're not part of a city. We're a municipal utility with our own elected board in 7 wards within Sacramento County. We've about 620,000 meters serving 1.4 million people. And going back to the structure, we're also in crazy California, as you know, which brings some uniqueness to the way we manage the utility. So our governance is, our board makes all the decisions, which makes us, quite frankly, very, very nimble. For example, we're introducing time of day rates. We don't call it time of use, but time of day for residential customers on January 1st of next year. Some of the major issues that are going on in California that really affect how we run the utility are obviously, as the legislature decides on SB 100, which is the initiative to have all utilities be 100% carbon-free with about 60% renewable portfolio. Now, that hasn't passed yet, but that obviously changes your mix over the years, and you have to work on your generation plants and turn down your thermals and up your renewables, but we're dealing with that. 2 other things that we're dealing with that I was going to wait, but to give you an idea what SMUD's dealing with, we're very much affected by how the California legislature is reacting to the wildfires and the whole insurance issues there. And my own personal opinion is I don't know if it's going to take a bankruptcy of one of the IOUs, large IOUs, to really get the attention and make some rules, because it's not a good thing to hold the utilities accountable for everything, because that's probably not good in the bottom line for the consumer.
You know, Frankie, you might explain that a little bit, because that is so not the norm in the rest of the United States, and frankly, I don't know of anywhere else in the world that when the wind blows and the wires fall down, should a fire start, the utility is held accountable.
Yeah, basically, you have to have a great plan, and you have to maintain, there's lots of rules around how you maintain your system in California and in the rest of the country, I'm sure. So you have to comply with all of that. And then if something falls down, like Helen talked about, you're held accountable then for the damage. Now, there's a lot of discussion going on, well, what does that mean? So we'll take other actions, like we'll start disabling reclosers when the wind is above a certain amount, or we'll turn off the system. The regulators are indicating that, well, no, you can't do that either, because that's got some risk to it. So there's a real danger here that the insurance needs of the industry will not be met by the insurance industry. They're not going to want to cover just anything. And the accountability may result in, I know our neighbors they're all around us. The large neighbor we have around us, PG&E, are really dealing with this, and the large utilities, the 2 large municipals, LA and ourselves, along with Southern Cal Edison, San Diego, and PG&E are discussing this and working with regulators, because the accountability is, it's not good for the consumer, believe it or not. So, and turning off your power will actually save your house, possibly, in a fire. So there's all the opinions, there's lots of lawsuits, and it hasn't been worked out yet, but it's a major, major issue right now in California, probably the biggest right now within the utility business.
That's great. So let's start talking about the grid, and let's start talking about the digitization of the grid. So I've sat through most of the sessions this morning, and it's really been amazing. One of the things that we learned early this morning, if you happen to listen to Pat Calawan, who's the CEO and chairman of PNM, but also the CEO and chairman of EEI, Smart Cities is one of EEI's big moves this year. And I know both you and Frankie deal with municipal utilities that are very engaged with your community. Martha, talk a little bit about how you guys think about that interaction.
For us, everything is governed by our corporate philosophy is people first, which means we look at the impact on our customers, on our community, and on our employees. We are 94% deployed, and
Deployed with
I'm sorry,
smart
with
meters?
AMI.
Yeah, okay.
We did a converged network, so we did DA and AMI, and we are 94% complete with AMI. One of the approaches, obviously I think we could all speak to the benefits, at least the immediate benefits for customers, but one of the things we looked at was how it would benefit the community at large. So it was a big part of our economic development effort. we have partnered with the companies, the vendors that we were using for our grid deployment and some other solar and other things we had in flight. And over the last few years, the benefit to the community has been 675 jobs and 1.1 billion in economic benefit. So in addition to AMI, like I said, we did get that community benefit that we're very proud of.
That's great. So Jason, I do want to go back to the IOU world. I've grown up in the utility industry, spent the last 12 years of my career at PG&E in California, and the first however many years at TXU in Texas. So it's a little bit different when you're looking at it from the vantage point of the investor-owned utility. But what I love about what Duke's done is how you've really embraced innovation. Can you talk a little bit about grid innovation and really, when I say to you, how do you think about the grid edge, what comes to mind?
Sure. Well, luckily, my group is called the Emerging Technology Organization, and so we do research and development for Duke. Mostly what I concentrate on is grid research. And so one of the things that we've been adamantly involved with over the past 4 years is interoperability of grid edge devices. Because we definitely believe that true interoperability, not just what comes from saying you adhere to some standards, but actually doing interop testing where you can swap in and out different manufacturers' devices are going to be needed in the future. It's going to be needed from the standpoint that the grid edge is going to be where you have to make most of your decisions. We have relied traditionally, and we have done it to ourselves, since we're not blaming anyone. We've asked for proprietary systems where you basically have a hub and spoke method where you go out, poll a device that's at the grid edge, and it comes back to some centralized systems. You make decisions and you push a decision back out. That does not work for DERs. The methods change too quickly. The clouds move. So when you are trying to mitigate solar intermittency with a battery and try to do smoothing on it, you can't do that when you got a 15-minute run for your DMS to be able to give you some kind of answer. So we have been extremely pushing more grid edge intelligence. And so when you allow devices to actually speak to themselves in the field, we took that 15 minutes down to a quarter of a second.
So talk a little more about that, because that's actually very innovative, and it's actually right in the sweet spot of what we should be talking about today. So that's how the utilities themselves, as well as their customers, talk a little bit more about that.
So we had an effort called Coalition of the Willing. It was about 4 years ago where we asked...
Coalition of the Wheeling or
Willing?
Willing, okay,
sorry. So Coalition of the Willing. And it was a joke name because a year before we had gone and asked a lot of our vendors to participate in an interoperability exercise with us, and all but 6 of them said no. And those 6 were kind of our core. The following year, after we had proven what we could do with doing solar smoothing at the edge, and we actually had 44 companies asked to be a part of it. We took 25. And so what we ended up doing was we created an interoperable microgrid using many different manufacturers, 25 different manufacturers' equipment, as well as the key to this was something called Open Field Message Bus. And Open Field Message Bus was using more internet-based protocols, MQTT, DDS, AMQP, on a messaging system.
Okay, you just went right over my head there, buddy. I'm on the customer side.
let's just say it's internet-based protocols, a more publish, subscribe. So you don't have to come all the way back to a head-end system and get a decision made and push it back out. It's more of machine-to-machine language, and you can talk to each other. And so that's one of the things that we worked on. But again, from the standpoint of having to move from what the utilities ourselves had asked for, which was proprietary systems to where nobody could hack them, nobody could get in. We did it to ourselves. Now making this shift and going, okay, now we really want you to be more interoperable so everybody can play together so we can make faster decisions at the edge. It's come a long way, but I really commend our manufacturer community, our vendor community for starting to step up and be on board with this.
Well, I have to say, from an investor-owned utility perspective, I'm really not aware of anybody else who's been that open with their vendors. That's really, really commendable. Hopefully that continues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things like OpenFMB that have been around, it's now a standard. It's been a standard for the North American Energy Standards Board for 3 years now. Now what we're really trying to do is we're now seeing manufacturers come out with devices that already have OpenFMB embedded in it.
Okay.
And really what that really means for us is it means that there is some part of either the core, so if it's a quad-core processor, they're giving us one core as well as giving us some memory to where we can download our own applications to the device itself. So whether it be a relay, whether it be a modem, we can actually, as Duke Energy, put our own code onto that device without disrupting what that device is supposed to do. That's the one thing we made sure of. Whatever the core device functionality was supposed to be, we could not touch that, but we had processing and memory space that now we can download our own apps to.
So, Jason, one other question. So you're in a regulated utility, and the things you've talked about mostly are those things that are, how do we operate the grid better? How do we connect with others and make the grid open for others? Do you work with other parts of the utility to do any other kind of customer products and services?
Yeah, so we have a non-reg side, of course, but we deal with a lot of reg and non-reg. So my group sits in the middle. We're kind of like Switzerland. So we can share, we're a tax on our shareholders. So our customers are not paying for our group, our shareholders pay for our group, so which means that we can share our learnings with both the reg and non-reg side. And so, things like our commercial renewables group. So we've done drone inspections with them to where we started with doing solar. So they used to walk 5 megawatt solar farms or 15 megawatt solar farms doing inspections. It took them 3 days to do. With a drone with an IR camera, you can do it in about 3 hours. And now we're putting AI on that drone, so we don't have to come back and analyze the picture itself. The drone's already knowing what a failed cell looks like and can help write work orders. We are also working with our products and services teams on smart cities types projects. So we help them develop some key LED lighting for street lights, as well as kiosks, and they're called high definition digital display banners, where you can see in downtown cities, different ads pop up. You can take a selfie picture in front of them. They also have security because they have cameras on them, so security play. So just a lot of different pieces to the part, and also dealing with our training department on augmented reality and virtual reality, from figuring out how the next generation of linemen are going to be trained. Instead of having to pull everybody one place to start doing work, we're now creating this augmented reality, virtual reality training simulators where they can put on a set of glasses and then put together a 3-pot overhead bank using the tools that
Now,
you can
I happen to know that a 3-pot overhead bank means a grouping of 3 transformers.
That is correct, sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah,
I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're welcome. So I want to move quickly for a second, because the interesting things you guys are doing to integrate with customers and to integrate with vendors mean that the investor-owned utilities, and perhaps even the city-owned utilities, have to be looking for other revenue sources and other ways to partner. So Frankie, talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Okay, I'll start with telling you how we're aligned and what drives us. Our board sets out directives for the general manager, CEO, Arlen Orchard, my boss. And then what we've worked on over the last few years is really aligning the organization around a 5-year strategy that we refresh each year. And it's fundamentally based on a North Star, which I'm sure everybody has a symbol, but for us it's been a really big change for the company to be more and more aligned and less siloed. Therefore, the speed to market, speed for change has really increased. And it's centered around safety at the top. We say treasure our employees, customer and community, operational excellence, financially fit and sustainable future. And then we have strategies and initiatives behind each of those. If you think about the financially fit and you look forward with revenue from energy sales either declining or flat, you have to ask yourself if costs are, so you have the costs getting handled on the operational excellence, which I'll speak about in a little while. But on the financially fit, we decided that SMUD's a decent model and has had a lot of decent partners over the years, so we'll start something called the Innovation Generator, which gave us as a municipal utility under our rules, we can't take equity positions with companies, but we've signed multiple deals with companies to either innovate with them or partner with them for increased sales and take revenue shares. A couple of them are, we worked with Spacetime Insight and NEC in Japan, who coincidentally I worked for in my prior career, which comes full circle, to help them bring their products to market in the deregulated Japanese market and hopefully go further within Australasia and Southeast Asia. We also recently signed, we contracted with OSI out of Minneapolis for our Advanced Distribution Management System, our ADMS system. But then we also signed a partnering deal to develop the next DERM system with them going forward. And there's two more I wanted
That
to
would be
mention.
the DER management system, correct?
Yeah, Distributed Energy Resource Management System. So we're going to develop that with them. So we have multiple deals, and Jason's talked about training. We've even innovated in the training area where in the past during training, and this sounds pretty simple, but it's really saved us tons and tons of time and increased the quality. In our training school now we're using a technology called evals, and we're helping that company grow in the utility business while using the technology where you imagine a foreman in a bucket truck using an iPad and voice recording his feedback to the trainee or the apprentice, and then they're using that at nighttime. It's really sped up our training. So we're really looking at operational stuff. And then finally, for those of you who may not know, anybody know what CCAs are in California? Oh, good, there's a few. So community choice aggregators, there was a law passed, Helen reminded me, I thought it was 03, it was passed in California that gave jurisdictions the ability to create their own utility essentially and then contract for power and basically be their own entity. So they're kind of exploding in California. The first one was Marin that started there. So SMUD decided to get into that business, and to quote, others may know this better than me, but Michael Picker, head of the CPUC, said that over 80% of customers will be in CCAs within several years, and there'll be a transfer of $9 billion of revenue. So we decided to go after a piece of that. So far we've inked 2 deals.
Everybody who's got stock in an IOU in California is now depressed.
Now
including
hates me and hates MUD. But basically what I'm trying to say is we're trying to say energy sales may be doing this, but there's lots and lots of other things based on our structure, our board is supportive of, where we can really increase revenues for SMUD, increase presence, and the model that SMUD has matches in a lot of cases what these CCAs are looking for. So that's an idea of what we're doing with innovation and revenue growth specifically.
What about you, Martha? I know you guys are also doing quite a bit around innovation. What I love about this is, you don't always find, just to be clear, you don't always find investor-owned utilities who do invest, shareholders do invest in innovation. I really expect it in these two guys because they're embracing their customers and their community in a different way that's not quite as easy on the other side. So tell us a little bit about innovation, especially as it relates to digitization in your area.
Shout out to Duke, actually. Several years ago, they helped us with our first solar battery storage microgrid, leveraging what they had learned during their coalition of the willing. So not only do they share with their vendors, they were also willing to share with another utility. So we learned a lot as part of that partnership. And the other things we're looking at, we do have, and I learned in this morning's presentation that naming anything innovation is apparently the kiss of death for innovation, so I'm sorry about that. But we do have a group, a cross-functional, almost a steering committee, an internal steering committee on innovation. And one of the things we have sponsored is actually doing some work with the community in terms of doing an innovation competition and looking for ideas from the community, which turned out to be so successful and very well, I guess attended isn't the word, but it was a very popular event. We had a lot of people participate. We had some really good ideas, very clever. And so we decided this year to do one internal to the company for employees to see what they had been thinking about. And in both cases, we found 3 to 4 ideas that that were interesting enough for us to pursue, seeing how we could leverage that in the running of our business.
Yeah, so Jason, you mentioned a little bit about using drones, and I know, Frankie, you mentioned a little bit about the wildfires. So both of you guys, I know, are very innovative in the use of LiDAR and other. Talk about that a little bit.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we started looking at the use of manned and unmanned aircraft, drones, and LiDAR. LiDAR is essentially a technology, very simply put, that can see unhealthy trees that the human eye can't see. So if you think about, we have certain corridors that we maintain, but if you look at the Butte fire that PG&E was blamed for, the tree fell outside of the right-of-way and was healthy just a while before that. So that's a long, complicated story. But we've been able to now identify very specifically trees that we can take out that maybe would not have been spotted by our patrols going through. And on the drone side, the inspections we can do, that from a safety point of view, people don't have to do them anymore. They're more accurate, and we can start capturing the digital images. You can think about how you can use that information then to populate your asset information, and then you can use it to analytics. So I'll probably expand now while you're on the topic into, our future is the digital worker with wearables. I don't know who's doing a lot in this yet, but the idea of somebody that's already there at your asset, collecting information either through cameras, sensors, whatever, feeding back to your systems, then enabling not only increases in reliability, reductions in maintenance costs, but improved safety and better customer service. So it hits an awful lot of those. So we're heavily focused. Do you want me to just keep going here, or just want me to stop?
Well, we obviously, in practice, you were stopping here, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, when I think about that point on the North Star of operational excellence, and you think about my large group of lots of people in the field, people in the office trying to manage this, I'm very enthusiastic about this because innovation in operations is just as important as innovation in customer. I used to be the chief customer officer, and we copied some of the stuff Helen was doing at PG&E, and Utilligent helped us marry that along and really structure our strategy around do right by the customer while doing it at less cost. It's a great concept, right? Now over on the grid side, talk to the employees, look at the processes you have, look at the technology you already have before you buy more, and I'll give you an example. We go to one area of the county, replace a pole on a Monday, go to another area on a Tuesday, go back to the same area on a Monday, just because the way you were managing the work. Somebody says, well, why don't we replace 3 poles in one area at once? Suddenly, look at your saving. Less outages for the customer, you're saving on emissions. And all that was the marrying of some scheduling software with GIS information, and you have this really nice visual tool. That's how we're developing, and we have big, broader issues around workforce optimization that you talked about sharing information. We had a phone call with First Energy last week. So that's a uniqueness about our industry, the ability to learn from others and really advance where we're going. But I'm very enthusiastic about the millions of dollars we're saving, and the employees are happy. If anybody ever tells you change management is difficult in the field, that is not true. Their usual response is, what took you so long?
Yeah.
They saw the problems before. So anyway,
That's for sure.
I got my soapbox there.
So, Jason, I do want to. We're going to open up for questions in just a second. I do want to ask you one question because you are the lone representative of the IOU world right now. So
That sounds ominous.
I know, and wonderful. Thinking about this transition to digitization and to grid and to some of the things that you're doing at the grid edge. What do you think the role of regulation should be? We heard from Tom Fanning this morning. We heard from a panel of regulators. So we've heard a lot about that because, these guys can get creative because their regulators are also their board of directors, which is probably good and bad. Lots of different, things about it. But for you guys, it's got to be a little bit challenging, particularly in 6 different regulatory jurisdictions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think about that?
So it's a lot different. So for Duke, being that we run a non-reg and a reg side, if we're just talking about the reg side, we do have 6 different public service commissions that we have to work with. And so therefore we have, in some cases, 6 different strategies on how they want the grid to be run and what they think is the best for the customer. We put forth a really aggressive plan. It's a $25 billion grid modernization plan over the next 10 years. And so that's all 6 territories. And so what we're really trying to do is satisfy everyone's concerns over getting the grid in a much better shape to be able to accept much more distributed energy resources in the future, as well as providing for much more resiliency and flexibility, because a lot of our service territory sits in hurricane-prone and tornado-prone areas. So from a regulatory standpoint, they have been great to work with. They have pushed us,
Now,
as
they're
they
not
should.
here. You don't have
Yeah,
to
I know
say that,
but we're being recorded. So they
There is that.
they have pushed us to really go back and look at our plan and make sure that our plan is the best that it can be. Trim where you can trim, but make sure that you are, number one, always keeping the customer at the front of mind. We believe we've done that. So some other things that I think are going to change. I think that at some point in the future, and this is my opinion, we're going to, of course, to see that decoupling of rates. So, losing that connection to the volumetric kilowatt hour sales. It just, for us, I don't think, in my opinion, looking out, it's not going to continue.
So there are about 20 jurisdictions today that have kilowatt hour sales and the revenue through kilowatt hour sales separated, decoupled from the profits that go back to the shareholders. But your states are not among those.
Our states are not. And so our only really dereg state is Ohio. So we're traditionally a vertically integrated utility. So we think that's going to be something that probably needs to happen, but it's also going to be a lot of regulation change in how we're going to be allowed to treat customers differently. Because today we have to treat all of our regulated customers the same. But we're going to need to have much more flexibility for customers that want to be able to be served by residential solar, or even our larger customers that want microgrids and want us to be able to provide them. We're going to have a lot more flexibility on the regulated side to be able to do that, because as we all know, there's plenty of third parties that are willing to come into our regulated areas and do that job for us. So I think the regulatory construct that we have to do is just modernize it. And it's not scrapping it totally, but it is modernizing the regulatory construct and making it much more agile than it is today, where you have to go do everything, then come back and ask for the rate relief after it's been in for a while. So we're going to be looking at doing a few more riders, things like that, that will be able to get some immediate return.
So today, if I were to describe your primary earning mechanism as a company for Duke today, you would earn on the assets that you have. What do you think the future is?
So we're primarily an asset-based rate recovery right now, but we are moving across the energy value chain. And that energy value chain, we're going to be focusing more on products and services and outcomes. And those outcomes are for whatever our customer is actually asking us for. And so we have hopefully flipped the switch that has been needing to be done for a while, to where we are now going to be able to offer some programs behind the meter that we hadn't been able to, continue to offer many more energy efficiency programs, but even go into more along the lines of treating our customers to where we've gone out and asked, and there's three things that they really want. They want to be they say, we want you to empower me. They want to know, they want to be able to be in control of the relationship with Duke Energy, not just receive a bill once a month or a text every now and then. They also want to they say that we want to be cool. We get a lot of millennials coming into our service area. And so the way we communicate with them is really key for them, and the relationship that how they want to be communicated with. And the last one, and probably the most important one, is they don't want to be taken for granted. Yeah. They're not rate base. They are customers. And now the customer for us has been really talking back to us, and we have finally started listening to where I think we've got programs in place to really start to address a lot of what they're looking for.
That's great. So I saw a lot of people's eyes light up when Jason started talking about those alphabets earlier. And so I'm guessing there's probably some questions in this room. I'd like to open it up. Does anyone have a question? Could you state your name and your...
My name's Alex. I'm with Leidos, defense contractor out of Preston, Virginia. You talked about, the deployment of devices and assets, and, with the rate at which these devices are being deployed and the innovation that comes with it opens up tremendous risk affiliated with deploying those assets to the field. How is Duke managing risk from, say, a cyber standpoint when deploying these assets that are now talking to the internet that historically have not?
Sure. So that's probably one of the things that we talk about most, is how to actually secure the devices. So one of the things that we work on is we do not necessarily go out, and my group does not work with commercially available products. My group works with manufacturers to develop the next set of products. And so what we do is we build security in from the base. which is a lot different than the products that are out available today. And some of them, security is an add-on function. So we look at building security in at the base, but we also recognize the fact that we are not going to prevent every attack vector because the threat vectors change every day. So what we are really focusing our development work on is detection and isolation of that attack. So what we're really doing is kind of building a pyramid scheme around looking for things like we build in a bill of health check, a heartbeat check. Let's see, there's one more that I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but there's things that we are building into these devices that make us say there's a quality of trust level there. And once that quality of trust level drops to a point, we tell the other devices around it because we can talk machine to machine now. And again, this is not deployed, this is what we're doing in the development work. Is the machine to machine says, you don't listen to that person anymore. We make them a virtual North Korea.
Well, that's a good answer. Yeah. Name and- name and-
I'm sorry, my name is Jake Valley. Piggyback on that last question, are there security protocol standards for the industry? Is it just not you at Duke, Jason? Is it like are there device security protocols that are set as a standard for, let's say, validation of your devices that you're developing?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do not develop standards. We work, and there's a very smart gentleman right in front of you that is probably the person that you need to talk to about security and cybersecurity. But we work with those manufacturers. We work with the industry standards, and most importantly, we bring our own cybersecurity folks in. So to ensure that we're not working in a vacuum here, we bring the folks that know the rules and regulations in to work, and they actually do penetration tests on our devices that we're working on. We're talking about drones real quick. I'll just give an aside. We built up a drone program. We handed it off to our aviation group to run. We've got 30 trained pilots. We had 4 or 5 different platforms that were being used. We got shut down when we penetration tested them. Because they were all made outside the United States and outside of Europe. And so our cybersecurity folks said, you can't use those anymore. So we had to really pivot there. So cybersecurity is something we think about all the time, and it's, as Tom said earlier.
Yeah, that's what Tom Fanning spoke about this morning. It is, from my knowledge, probably for the last 5 years, the #1 issue for every CEO and every utility. And they don't talk about it a lot, obviously, but it's definitely front of mind. Yes.
I'm Irfan Ibrahim, CEO of TVB Consulting. Question I have about how to balance innovation with reliability. Because, we boast 5 nines of availability that even the internet that we want to depend on smart grid cannot provide. How do we do this? Because what innovation does is create a whole bunch of new use cases. Those use cases come with reliability issues because suddenly there's a proliferation of number of users that are part of that use case. In the old world, there were very few players, and you knew them, and it was a very different paradigm. So while we have access to the latest technology, TCP/IP, in OpenFMP and all of that, there's an issue of reliability when you have many degrees of freedom and many nodes. How do you balance that when you think of innovation?
Do you want to start or you want me to?
I just say very generally, I don't have an answer for you other than to say we're very worried about that. The dependence on the communication networks is a big, big change for utilities, right? You're not in control anymore. You can't create your own network, and the amount of devices going on there is going to make that worse. So I'm kind of repeating what you said, but it really is a matter of priority. So we'll not intentionally, obviously, sacrifice reliability, but really think through the innovations. But we're going to have to evolve. That there's a dependence on the communication network. So, we're talking to partners there, and it's not depends on where the tipping point is. And we also know on our AMI network we're not using much of the capacity there. So there's available capacity already there we can use with our partnerships with smart cities. I can go into all that, but they're the same. Everybody talks about around enabling cities, but using the network that's already put in place. So
the connected thing there is, let's take the Napa Valley and Sonoma cause COPD if people inhale those heavy metals. So see,
Yep.
it's not so much about cyber is an issue, resilience is
Yep.
an issue, but I'm thinking about public safety.
Yep.
With a lot of new technologies that are sitting in unmanned facilities, an accident waiting to happen.
Yep.
To think of the social blowback of something.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. Other questions? Yes.
Thanks, Al. I'm George Bellwood from Columbus, Ohio. I actually like to ask you all a question about the democratization of the grid, which is, I think, our topic today.
Yeah, we found that word difficult to, it didn't roll off the tongue exactly, so you notice none of us said it.
Rolling off my tongue. So you talk a lot about smart cities, and it seems like the municipals kind of have the upper hand in the ability to, if I can use the word municipalize services to their constituents, integrating water, electric services, and rolling out technology to allow you to support things like smart sensors on roads and provide your community residents those advantages. The IOUs may be a bit challenged with the cities in their service territories that want to do those same things. How do you expose the investments you've made and allow cities in your territories that aren't municipalized to take advantage of some of those investments for these same outcomes?
I think that's you.
Yeah, I think it's me too, and I don't know if I have a good answer for that one, George. The thing that we try to do right now is we're trying to work with, because non-reg is going a lot better from smart cities deployments for us than it is reg. Because really, every time you start, and I'm not throwing one of us, I won't say the name, but it's our largest city, and we are, we go and we talk, and they want to talk to us about smart city deployments, and we've had, microgrid meetings, and all this, but it's always, I have to come with my checkbook, and we can't pay from a regulated standpoint. I can't pay for that. So there's smart cities is going to be somewhat of a tough sell for inside a regulated area without some type of external funding, like what Columbus just won with a very nice grant, which it seems like it's going to be a great project. But I don't have a great answer for you there yet, because there's always this fighting for money because nobody in the city is really willing to give up or open up a checkbook to show, we've got this figured out, we can help you with it.
Yeah, Jason, I think that's a great way of stating it. And you just got two great examples of smart cities and people who are really driving what we mean by smart cities in Martha and in Frankie. And unfortunately, I think that's the last question that we can have. I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I especially want to thank Jason and Martha and Frankie. And let's all go forward. Thank you.